Значит, вот она с 10 до, ну, обычно где-то до часа, часа 15, вот. Да, они вообще здесь, я тоже только туда поехал.
Delegates, please take your seats. We'll be starting shortly. Thank you. Good morning, colleagues. Thank you for joining me. We are beginning now. I see there's one huddle on our left. I'll give them a minute to wrap up, and then we can begin. Thank you. Thank you for your patience. Good morning, everyone. We will resume our session now. Thank you. Yesterday, we made good progress on the consideration of our CRPs, and I thank you for the spirit of compromise that exists within this room. Before we start looking at the CRPs, I would like to hear reports from the contact groups that met yesterday. First, I would like to invite one of the co-chairs of the contact group on marine and coastal biodiversity to provide us with an update on progress. May I give the floor to Canada to give us this update. Thank you. Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, colleagues. The contact group on marine and coastal biodiversity, which I had the pleasure of co-chairing with my colleague Mary May Jeremy, was tasked with addressing the issue of the conservation and sustainable use of the marine and coastal biodiversity and ecologically or biologically significant marine areas, also known as EBSAs, and further work in this regard. As per your instructions, 2 non-papers were made available for the contact group discussions. I would like to note and thank the hard and good quality work of the Secretariat in this regard. The contact group met twice on the evenings of the 8th and 9th December. The contact group held productive discussions on these issues. With respect to the issue of conservation and sustainable use of marine and coastal biodiversity, we made significantly good progress and advanced discussions with only a small number of brackets that remain in the non-paper. We were unfortunately unable to make significant progress on the issue of further work for EBSAs due to the limited time available. In this regard, Madam Chair, a number of delegates in the contact group expressed their frustration with the insufficient time allocated to discuss marine and coastal biodiversity issues. In particular, as this concern had been previously expressed at Substa 24, as captured in Substa Recommendation 24/9 and 24/10. Delegates also expressed the strong desire to have a clear indication coming from this COP as to the next steps on the issues of EBSAs in order to avoid continued delays in advancing the important scientific and technical work on this topic. As such, we are requesting an additional contact group session, Madam Chair, first to develop clear language to be included in the COP decision regarding next steps for EBSAs, and of course also to clean up any remaining brackets in the non-paper on conservation and sustainable use. In view of the importance of these issues, we strongly feel that a contact group is needed and hope that you can accommodate this request, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Canada, for that clear report, and we appreciate the work that you've been doing along with your companion from Seychelles. And yes, we've looked at the schedule, and yes, we can grant you the time today at 7:30. So the Marine will continue with the last session of their contact group today at 7:30 p.m. Thank you very much. Now we'll move to the contact group on CP item 7, implementation plan and capacity building, who met yesterday. I will give the floor to Cameroon to provide an update on the progress. Cameroon, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The contact group on Cartagena Protocol Agenda Item 7 on the Implementation Plan and Capacity Building Action Plan met yesterday from 7:30 p.m. to midnight. The contact group was chaired by myself, Rigobert Ntep from Cameroon, and Dr. Rita Andoko from Hungary. We worked on the basis of the relevant decisions contained in the decision document CBD/CP/MOB/10/1/Add 5, as this matter has been previously considered at the third meeting of the subsidiary body on implementation. The group worked in a good spirit of compromise to resolve brackets in decisions and the narratives and the tables of the plans. The contact group formulated an additional paragraph after the original paragraph 4 in the draft decision on the implementation plan relating to resources and containing a reference to the JEF funding window. The reference to the funding window was not acceptable to several parties. The group was of the view that this paragraph, together with paragraphs 5 and 6 on resources out of the implementation decision and probably capacity building action plan decision, which contains almost identical paragraphs, will best be dealt with as part of the decision on financial mechanism, as their financial experts are following that discussion and are not in the contact group on the implementation plan and capacity building action plan. The group will resume this morning at 11 a.m. with a view to completing its work, and it is expected that the group will be able to finalize its deliberation during this session so that the CRP can be prepared. I thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your hard work, along with your co-chair from Hungary. Appreciate this. So as you said, you will resume your work this morning at 11 with the aim of completing the work set before you. Thank you very much. I can see that we've all worked diligently and we're making good progress on these two outcomes, which are important for the work of the Cartagena Protocol on biosafety. And I trust that this cooperative spirit will continue when these contact groups resume, and also as we continue into our consideration of the CRPs. So now we'll begin with the consideration of the CRPs set before us. We'll begin with CRP 3 on COP item 17, review of effectiveness and structures and processes under the CBD and its protocols. We could not approve the CRP yesterday as more consultations were required on some paragraphs in order to facilitate consensus. So let us now go back to paragraphs 7 and 8. Yesterday, I asked EU, Namibia, New Zealand, Canada, and I see maybe others join to find a compromise text for the 2 paragraphs. We'll begin with paragraph 7. Is it possible for me to hear from one of those parties to present this hopefully compromise text for the floor? I see Canada. Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to my colleagues for this productive work. We believe we have found a great text to compromise and present everyone's views. I will first read it throughout and then read it again at dictation speed. Paragraph 7 reads, encourages parties and observers to continue to participate in hybrid meetings, comma, when applicable, comma, and in extraordinary circumstances, comma, in virtual meetings, while recognizing the need to ensure the full and effective participation of parties, and especially, and then we have the list that we've agreed to yesterday, to promote transparent and inclusive processes under the convention, comma, as long as no final decisions are taken virtually, with the exception of budgetary and procedural matters. If you allow me, I'll read that again at slower speed. So encourages parties and observers to continue to participate in, and then we remove virtual and, continuing with hybrid meetings, comma, and then we add when applicable, comma, and in extraordinary circumstances, comma, in virtual meetings, comma. Then the paragraph continues as normal with the agreed modification from yesterday. And then it continues to promote transparent and inclusive processes under the convention, comma, and then we add, as long as no final decisions are taken virtually, comma, with the exception of budgetary and procedural matters, full stop.
Thank you very much, Canada, on behalf of the small group. So therefore, I'll put before you this proposed carefully worded text for para 7. And I ask, is it acceptable? Are we able to approve paragraph 7? I see a request for the floor, United States of America. You have the floor.
I was just hoping that you might be able, the Secretariat may be able to read the final product again so that we can get it all.
Sure. Thank
Thank you.
you for your request. Secretariat.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So paragraph 7, as amended, reads as follows. Encourages parties and observers to continue to participate in hybrid meetings, comma, when applicable and in extraordinary circumstances, comma, in virtual meetings, comma, while recognizing the need to ensure the full and effective participation of parties, comma, and especially developing country parties, comma, in particular the least developed and small island developing states among them, comma, and countries with economies in transition, comma, to promote transport and inclusive processes under the convention, comma, as long as no final decisions are taken virtually, comma, with the exception of budgetary and procedural matters.
I see the EU. EU, you'd like to take the floor?
Thank you very much, Madam Co-Chair. Chair. I think there was a comma missing after when applicable, because the when applicable relates to the hybrid meetings and the exceptional circumstances relates to the virtual meetings. Thank you.
So we will read it again to make sure we have it straight. Thank you, Secretary.
Read it again. Thank you, Madam Chair. Paragraph 7 reads, encourages parties and observers to continue to participate in hybrid meetings, comma, when applicable, comma, and in extraordinary circumstances, comma, in virtual meetings, comma, while recognizing the need to ensure the full and effective participation of parties, comma, and especially developing country parties, comma, in particular the least developed and small island developing states among them, comma, and countries with economies in transition, comma, to promote transparent and inclusive processes under the convention, comma, as long as no final decisions are taken virtually, comma, with the exception of budgetary and procedural matters, full stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat. So I'm presenting paragraph 7 as read for the approval of the parties. I see no request for the floor. So therefore, paragraph 7 with all the amendments carefully worded is approved. Thank you. So let us now turn to paragraph 8. May I hear from one of the parties if you have that proposed? I see Canada has the floor. Canada, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We have smaller amendments for this paragraph. So on the third line, after it says, and prepare options for procedures for such, and we would add hybrid meetings, comma, and continue with under extraordinary circumstances, add in virtual meetings, and the rest of the paragraph continues.
Would you reiterate that again, please?
Yes, thank you. Third line after 2021 and 2022, comma, it would read, and prepare options for procedures for such hybrid meetings, comma, and under extraordinary circumstances in virtual meetings, comma, and then the rest of the paragraph continues as is.
Thank you. I'll have the Secretary read the paragraph in its entirety. Paragraph 8. Thank you, Secretary.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. So paragraph 8, as amended by the distinguished delegates from Canada, reads as follows. Requests the Executive Secretary to compile views from parties, comma, and relevant stakeholders, comma, and the experience and relevant studies available, comma, especially within the United Nations system, comma, in conducting virtual and hybrid meetings held in 2021 and 2022, comma, and prepare options for procedures for such hybrid meetings, comma, and under extraordinary circumstances in virtual meetings, comma, taking into account the specific challenges faced by delegations with network and connectivity problems, comma, in particular by developing country parties, comma, as well as indigenous peoples and local communities and observers, comma, and by those delegations from countries where meetings are scheduled at difficult times, comma, addressing issues about equity, participation, and legitimacy for consideration by the subsidiary body on implementation at its 4th meeting.
Thank you, Secretariat. If I understood correctly, yesterday it was raised that we wanted the same formulation of the countries as from 7 as to 8. Did I understand that correctly, parties? Namibia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. The understanding was for para 7, but it would make sense if we include it in para 8 for consistency. And then just a correction to the Secretariat that it should read for virtual meetings and not in virtual meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. So therefore, thank you for this. Shall I just read it? Sorry, just a minute. So we'll read it again to make sure we have it right, please. Thank you.
So paragraph 8, as further amended, reads as follows. Requests the Executive Secretary to compile views from parties, comma, and relevant stakeholders, comma, and the experience and relevant studies available, comma, especially within the United Nations system, comma, in conducting virtual and hybrid meetings held in 2021 and 2022, comma, and prepare options for procedures for such hybrid meetings, comma, and under extraordinary circumstances, thanks Namibia, for virtual meetings, comma, taking into account the specific challenges faced by delegations with network and connectivity problems, comma, in particular by developing country parties, comma, in particular by developing country parties, especially the least developed and small island developing states among them, comma, and countries with economies in transition, comma, as well as indigenous peoples and local communities and observers, comma, and by those delegations from countries where meetings are scheduled at difficult times, comma, addressing issues about equity, comma, participation, and legitimacy for consideration by the subsidiary body on implementation at its 4th meeting.
Thank you, Secretariat. So we've had the reading of 8. I bring it before the parties. Is this acceptable for approval? New Zealand, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Apologies for taking the floor. New Zealand is very happy to support paragraph 8, but I would wish to beg the Chair's indulgence for some text changes to accompany this in paragraph 9 when we get to it. Thank you.
Thank you, New Zealand. So for para 8, it appears that it's acceptable. I see no request to the floor. Therefore, para 8 is approved. Thank you. So we move to para 9, request the subsidiary body. I see New Zealand. New Zealand, you have the floor.
Thank you once again, Madam Chair. We would wish to provide just a few extra words to clarify the recommendations that the Secretariat would give to the SUBSTA. I will just read them out, starting from to make recommendations, and then the new text that provide options, and then 2, I think is already in there, and then address these issues to the governing bodies of the convention. Thank you.
Can you clarify, please? So it's to make recommendations that provide options. Please.
Sorry?
Can you repeat that again? So it should say, and to make, yes. Go ahead.
More than happy to. Thank you. All right. So starting with to make recommendations, the new text is that provide options to address these issues to, and that's the end of the new text, and then the governing bodies of the convention and the protocols.
Thank you, New Zealand. So we will read this para in its entirety to make sure we have it. Thank you. Secretariat, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So paragraph 9 would read, requests a subsidiary body on implementation to consider the compilation of views, comma, and options referred to in paragraph 8 above, and to make recommendations that provide options to address these issues to the governing bodies of the convention and the protocols for consideration at their next meeting.
Thank you, Secretariat. So we have the 9 with the additions, and we're presenting it to the parties. I see one request for the floor. Canada.
Thank you, Madam Chair. While we think that para 9, the initial proposal was fine, we can accept New Zealand's proposal. Although we just noticed that the options is mentioned twice, and so perhaps we could suggest removing the first one that says compilation of views, comma, and options. We could suggest removing that for removing the duplication. Thank you.
Okay, so it would, to consider the compilation of views
Yes.
referred to in paragraph 8, is that how it would read without the first set of options, okay? So therefore, with that, I see Namibia. Namibia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Namibia would like to support the proposal made by New Zealand. However, and I'm not sure, maybe we'll have to look at how best it would be suitable, but for us the consideration was to rather keep the first options, and then where we say and to make recommendations, we then delete provide options and just say to make recommendations to address these issues to the governing bodies.
Thank you,
So
Namibia.
request the subsidiary body on implementation to consider the compilation of views, analysis, and options referred to in paragraph 8 above, and to make recommendations to address these issues to the governing bodies, because the options will already be identified in para 8.
Thank you, Namibia, for that. So I go back to New Zealand. Is that formulation something that you can accept? New Zealand, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, if we retain the first options, first reference to options, we're happy to support, and in the spirit of compromise, what Namibia has proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I ask Canada. I see a nod. Okay, so can we just get a final readout from the Secretariat to make sure we have it right? Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. Paragraph 9 reads as follows. Request the subsidiary body on implementation to consider compilation of views and options referred to in paragraph 8. No, there's no analysis in paragraph 8, sorry. Let me see. Sorry, we are having...
Give us a minute, please. Thank you. Namibia, I have a question for you, please. Is it with the inclusion of the word analysis? I've been advised that since it doesn't exist in EAT and just options, so is it something that you can work without? So just having the compilation of views and options, or is analysis something that you must have? that question is you.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I was expecting you to give me the floor because I picked up that the Secretariat for the second time excluded analysis. I think the analysis are made, the options are made based on the analysis that's going to be made in para 8. Even though the wording analysis is not in para 8, you need to look at the assessment and the analysis of what the challenges were that parties were facing during 2020 and 2021. And therefore, we would like to retain analysis in para 9. Thank you.
Thank you for that confirmation. So let's just read it again, please. Thank you.
So, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, the distinguished delegates from Namibia, for that clarification. Paragraph 9 would read as follows: requests the subsidiary body on implementation to consider the compilation of views, analysis, and views, analysis and options referred to in paragraph 8 above, and to make recommendations to address these issues to the governing bodies of the convention and the protocols for consideration at their next meeting, period.
Thank you, Secretariat. So presenting that new formulation of 9 to the floor for your approval. I see no request for the floor. So the new formulation of para 9 is approved. Thank you. We'll move to section C now, other areas to improve effectiveness, and it's para 10. I see Argentina, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, colleagues. Actually, apologies, but I would like to request to go back to paragraph 7. If I could hear one more time the complete reading of that paragraph. Apologies for this, but I was reading again my notes, and I just want to double check that I got it correctly.
Sure, we'll have the Secretary read it for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Paragraph 7 reads, encourages parties and observers to continue to participate in hybrid meetings, when available, and in extraordinary circumstances, in virtual meetings, while recognizing the need to ensure the full and effective participation of parties, and especially developing country parties, in particular the least developed and small island developing states among them, and countries with economies in transition, to promote transparent and inclusive processes under the convention, as long as no final decisions are taken virtually, with the exception of budgetary and procedural matters, semicolon.
Thank you, Secretary. In the meantime, I will move on to Paras 10. It has brackets around it, and we had asked yesterday if Brazil and Canada could look at that in terms of coming up with text that would be a compromise text. Are we able to hear from either Brazil or Canada on this? We can hear from Canada. Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We believe that Canada was the one that introduced this text in Geneva, and the reason why it was still in square brackets is because we had not had the chance to address it. With my distinguished colleague from Brazil, we've came to a few small amendments to this paragraph, and were able to agree on removing the brackets. And so if you allow me, I'll read it at reading speed and then at dictation speed. So paragraph 10 would read, request the Executive Secretary to prepare, in consultation with parties, bureau members, partners, and stakeholders, an analysis of options to further improve the effectiveness of meetings under the Convention on Biological Diversity, including, inter alia, options to improve negotiating processes, to better follow up on previous decisions, comma, to benefit from innovations in decision-making methods and technologies, comma, and to explore modalities for the engagement of observers in processes under the Convention on Biological Diversity, comma, while ensuring that the rules of procedures of the convention are respected, comma, and to submit such analysis of options to the subsidiary body on implementation for its consideration at its 4th meeting. Full stop. I'll read it again with a slower pace. Thank you. So paragraph 10 goes, requests the executive secretary to prepare, comma, in consultation with parties, comma, and then we add bureau members, comma, partners, comma, and stakeholders, comma, an analysis of options to further improve the effectiveness of meetings under the Convention on Biological Diversity, comma, including, comma, inter alia, comma, options to improve negotiating processes, comma, to better follow up on previous decisions, comma, to benefit from innovations in decision-making methods and technologies, comma, and to explore modalities for the engagement of observers in processes under the Convention on Biological Diversity, comma, while ensuring that the rules of procedures of the convention are respected, comma, and to submit such analysis of options to the subsidiary body on implementation for its consideration at its 4th meeting. Full stop.
Thank you, Canada. We will have the Secretariat read it, and then we'll present for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Paragraph 10, as amended, reads as follows. Requests the Executive Secretary to prepare, comma, in consultation with parties, comma, bureau members, comma, partners, comma, and stakeholders, and an analysis of options to further improve the effectiveness of meetings under the Convention on Biological Diversity, comma, including inter alia options to improve negotiating processes, comma, to better follow up on previous decisions, comma, to benefit from innovations in decision-making methods and technologies, comma, and to explore modalities for the engagement of observers in processes under the Convention on Biological Diversity, comma, while ensuring that the rules of procedure of the Convention are respected, comma, and to submit such analysis of options to the subsidiary body on implementation for its consideration at its 4th meeting.
Thank you, Secretariat. Therefore, I'm presenting the newly formulated 10 to the parties for consideration and approval. I see no request for the floor. Therefore, para 10 is approved. Thank you. I note that Argentina asked for the rereading of 7, which was approved previously. I see nods for good. Thank you. So it appears that we have approved the paragraphs in CRP 3. I take it that is approved. Thank you. The CRP is approved. And we will prepare, an L document will be prepared for consideration by the COP. Now I'll bring before you CRP 7 and CRP 6. So CRP 7 is looking at, it's very similar to the one we just approved. So I'm begging your indulgence to present it to you as a whole, noting the differences. In CRP 7, which is the review of effectiveness of structures and processes on the convention and its protocols, we have the recalling decisions related to the Cartagena Protocol, while in the COP it would recall decisions of the COP. So that would be the difference that we have in the CP1. The paragraphs are the same, so therefore I'm asking if we could align CRP 7 to the newly approved and formulated CRP 3, if we can align all the paragraphs so that they appear the same, is this something we can approve for CRP 7 under the Cartagena Protocol? I see no request for the floor. Therefore, CRP 7, oh, I see there's one. Norway, you have the floor.
Thank you. Just to make sure that we have understood it correctly, in the CRPs for Cartagena and Nagoya, I guess the text will be not just Convention on Biological Diversity, but the protocols will be included in the text?
Yes, it would be, because it has to be related to the protocols. Yes. So thank you for clarifying that so that it's clear to all parties. So yes, it's the decisions, the words from the paragraphs in CRP 3 will be transferred to here, but we will be in reference to the protocol. Is that acceptable, Norway? I can't see you, so I just, yes, okay, thank you. So therefore, I bring before you CRP 7 for the Cartagena Protocol, review of effectiveness of structures and processes, and ask for its approval, aligning it with the one on the COP, CRP 3, which we just approved. I see no request for the floor. That is approved. An L document will be prepared for consideration by the COP. I also beg your indulgence for the similar CRP 6 under the Nagoya Protocol, review of effectiveness and structures and processes. You note that under CRP 6, the decisions are Nagoya Protocol decisions. That would be one of the main differences, so therefore we would transfer the change paragraphs in the approved CRP 3 to CRP 6 to align with all of these decisions and to make sure it's relevant to the Nagoya Protocol. It would say Nagoya Protocol. I bring before you CRP 6 for your approval. I see no request for the floor, so therefore CRP 6 is approved. An L document will be prepared for consideration by the COP. Thank you. Before we adjourn, give me 1 minute to consult. Thank you very much. Thank you for your indulgence. I know we have 2 sessions beginning at 11 right now, but I beg your indulgence because we have very little time in this entire COP, and therefore I would like to see if we could work on CRP 4 on nature and culture. Is this acceptable to the group? I see Argentina, you have a request for the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And yes, that would be acceptable if we postpone the session that was supposed to start now at 11.
Yeah, we will delay it.
Yeah.
Delay it,
Correct.
yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's not that you're in 2 places at the one time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your indulgence. Thank you. So we'll now consider CRP 4 on COP item 26, nature and culture. On the basis of the draft decision set out in Working Group on Article 8J, Recommendation 11.3, and SAP's Recommendation 23.5, I prepared this CRP with the help of the Secretariat and after undertaking informal consultations with parties. I thank those who participate in these discussions. We have this CRP before us. On the basis of draft decisions set out in Working Group on Article 8J, Recommendation 11.3, and SAP's 23.5, we have this before us. Thank you. We'll now go through this document, paragraph by paragraph, and then we'll look at the annex as a whole. So we are at CRP 4, nature and culture. This is agenda item 26. So the first preambulatory paragraph is just a line, the conference of the parties. I see no request to the floor. That is approved. The second preambulatory paragraph, recalling decision. I see no request to the floor. That is approved. The third preambulatory paragraph, welcoming. That is approved. The fourth preambulatory paragraph, noting. That is approved. We move to para 1, decides to renew. I see South Africa and Colombia would like to take the floor. South Africa, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. South Africa would like to make an input in terms of paragraph in discussion, especially on line number 4, just after the International Union of Conservation and Nature, IUCN, we need to include the International Council of Monuments and Sites, that is ICOMOS, ICOMOS, as well as the International Center for Study of Preservation and Restoration of Cultural Properties, ICROM, that is ICCROM. I think, Chair, where the you mentioned those advisory bodies as well throughout the document, if we can standardize and amend accordingly. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Let's see what Colombia has to say. Colombia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't really have any issues with my last colleague's proposal. Mine, however, is to include a mention on environmental education, which, if we're talking about nature and culture, it's an important inclusion. So at the end, right before ending the paragraph, where it says, and strengthening the links between biological and cultural diversity, I would like to include, comma, including through environmental education, comma, and then the rest of the paragraph as it is. I can repeat it if you need me to. So at the end of the paragraph, in the second to last line, it would read, and strengthening the links between biological and cultural diversity, comma, including through environmental education, comma, in order to achieve the goals of the convention at all levels and the 2050 vision in living in harmony with nature. Thank you.
Thank you. What do parties think about these two inclusions? Can I get your thoughts, please? I see no request to the floor, so parties appear to be happy with adding those two international groups and also to include on the second to last line cultural diversity, including through environmental education, and it goes on as it would be read in order to achieve. I see no request to the floor for paragraph 1. Paragraph 1 is approved. Thank you. Paragraph 2, request the executive secretary. I see no request to the floor. Paragraph 2 is approved. Paragraph 3, encourages governments. I see no request to the floor. Paragraph 3 is approved. Paragraph 4. I see no request to the floor. Paragraph 4 is approved. Paragraph 5. I see no request to the floor. Paragraph 5 is approved. I bring before you the annex in its entirety. I see there's a request for the floor from Columbia. Columbia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Again, a very small inclusion. In the goal, we would like to see it read to recognize and promote. Thank you.
Thank you, Columbia. So I bring before you the annex with that amendment to the goal. It would start out to recognize and promote. I see the EU. EU, you have the floor.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Did you just want to ask about the goal now?
Well, let's start there, and then we can add. So what are people's thoughts about the goal? Does the goal work?
Thank you.
Yes? Yes. Okay. So we can accept the goal. We were going to take the thing, we want to take the annex in its entirety, but at least we have approved the goal. The goal is approved. Thank you. So yes, please, EU, please submit your next intervention. Thank you. Please give EU the floor, please. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. We have a question regarding the new task added as task 1B now. We see that there are work ongoing in the Nagoya Protocol with regards of the access and benefit sharing or the benefits arising from the utilization of genetic resources. So we would like to ask for clarification if this is needed for this particular program of work, and if CBD, UNESCO, and USAN and others have capacity to carry out this work, then beside what's already done under the Nagoya. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I'll ask the Secretary to provide clarification. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Yes, indeed, this was discussed with UNESCO, UCN, and in order to, as well with delegations, in order to help to implement or to make more practical this element, there was the inclusion from tools and guidance. That means that the joint program aimed to produce these more practical, concrete tools and guidance instead of developing a higher level of, let's say, obligation or an outcome from the joint program that indeed we won't have the capacity to do it. But again, if we might manage to develop those tools and guidance. Thank you.
Does that response provide clarity to you, EU? EU, the floor.
Yes, it was. We are happy to hear that you think this is possible to do, and we also note that you see it is a bit of more educational material. So then we have two proposals. First, with regards the text in the task, that after utilization of genetic resources in line 3, we add that are held by indigenous peoples and local communities, which would it be aligned with the Nagoya Protocol, Article 5, Paragraph 2. And is that noted? Because then our second proposal is to move that the task then might be better placed under either free or for, as it's more about communication and yeah, maybe it could be a new task under 4 instead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, EU. Let me consult. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the proposals. So I present those proposals to the parties. So it is proposed that we place the reformulated 1B at the end of 4, so that be 4C, and it would read as normal with the exception of, with the line 3, utilization of genetic resources that are held by Indigenous peoples and local communities. And then would continue, and traditional knowledge associated. I put this before the parties. I see Columbia. Columbia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We would like to see task 1B stay in the first line because it is, it goes within a strategy to stop the ongoing and often dramatic decline. We don't see it really going to task 4, and we would like to retain the wording as is. We would ask for no changes to be made to this paragraph. Thank you.
Thank you, Columbia. So here we are. Have to find a compromise. Are there any thoughts? Any other parties can help us out to figure out the best way to move forward, to consider this spirit of compromise? We're asking EU and Colombia to think about this, and you were going to press the button? No? Maybe yes? Okay. You can go ahead. You have the floor. EU. Please give the floor to EU. May the technicians give the floor to EU, please. Maybe try the one next. Press it again, turn it off, and then press it again. Okay, you have the floor. Right.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are flexible with the placement of the task. It can remain where it is. However, we think it's important to align the language with Nagoya Protocol. Thank you.
Thank you for the flexibility of placement. So here we go. So Colombia, we have it back at the same spot with those words. Is there maybe a compromise text that we can think of that both parties could work with, please? Colombia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just hear the wording one more time at dictation speed, please?
Sure, and we'll have the Secretariat read it. Thank you.
Thank you. Task 1B. The Secretariat of the Convention, together with United Nations Education, Scientific and Cultural Organization and the International Union for Conservation of Nature and other relevant bodies, will develop tools and guidance to ensure that the benefit arising from the utilization of genetic resources held by Indigenous people and local communities and traditional knowledge associated with genetic resources are shared fairly, equitable with Indigenous people and local communities in order to preserve their culture, health, and well-being. Full stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Colombia. You have the floor. So thank you, Secretariat. Colombia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Secretariat, and thank you, Chair. Yes, we can be flexible with this language. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So therefore, I'm bringing together element 1, 2, element 3, and 4, and ask if there are any requests to the floor for this. Can we approve all of the elements? It appears so. So therefore, all of the elements and the annex in its entirety is approved. Thank you. So therefore, we are approving CRP. Oh, I see Mexico. Mexico, you have a concern? Mexico, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to refer to element 3C, please. So on task 3C, it's important when we're talking about the traditional knowledge, we want to see how we can have the free, prior and informed consent of Indigenous peoples, and that this agreed basis could be public or not. And we'd like to insist on the correct translation of free, prior and informed consent. Please correct that. And we have a proposal on that.
Please continue, Mexico. Please continue.
Gracias. Thank you. So our proposal would be that in the second line, to eliminate, to facilitate efforts to enable Indigenous peoples and local communities, and to continue with, to record, comma, document and transmit transitional knowledge, and then add or Indigenous peoples with their free, prior and informed consent, comma. And then at the end, we would continue with a focus on traditional knowledge relevant for the conservation of nature and culture and the sustainable use of natural resources, and then add in
public under decision of Indigenous people. Thank you.
Would you be able to repeat that last bit again, please? Mexico?
Claro.
Yes, of course.
La última parte sería.
So the last part would be after natural resources in English.
Information could be public under decision of Indigenous people. Thank you.
Right. I will have the secretary read it out to make sure that we have it, please. Thank you. Thank you, Mexico.
Thank you. Task 3C would read, the Secretariat of the Convention will work with UNESCO, IUCN, parties, and relevant organizations to facilitate the efforts to enable Indigenous people and local communities to record, document, and transmit traditional knowledge with their free, prior, and informed consent, with focus on traditional knowledge relevant for the conservation of nature and culture and the sustainable use of natural resources. This information could be public under the decision of Indigenous peoples.
Before we go to Colombia, Mexico, did we correctly capture your proposal, please? Mexico, you have the floor.
Yes. Could you read it out again, please? Please read it out again.
Sure. Task 3C. The Secretariat of the Convention will work with UNESCO, IUCN, parties, and relevant organizations to facilitate efforts to enable Indigenous people and local communities to record, document, transmit traditional knowledge with their free, prior, and informed consent, with a focus on traditional knowledge relevant for the conservation of nature and culture and the sustainable use of natural resources. This information could be public under the decision of Indigenous peoples. Full stop.
So Mexico, please let us know if we have it. Mexico?
Nos gustaría.
Well, we would very much like to clarify this after parties I'll read it out in English.
Parties and relevant organizations, we want to eliminate, to facilitate efforts to enable indigenous people and local communities. Only continue with the following word: to record, document and transmit traditional knowledge of the indigenous people with their free, prior, and informed consent. And after, with a focus on traditional knowledge relevant for the conservation of nature and culture and the sustainable use of natural resources, and with that, this information could be published under decision on indigenous people. Thank you.
So we'll read it one more time. While we're getting ready to read it, Columbia, we'll go to you. Columbia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I have no problem with the inclusion of that last line, but it can't stop at indigenous peoples. It has to include local communities as well to make coherence with the entire text. I don't understand so well the need to eliminate, to facilitate efforts, but I can live with it. But again, I just heard my colleague from Mexico just mention indigenous peoples after free, prior, informed consent, and I just want to make sure it's always indigenous peoples and local communities, not one or the other. It has to be both the whole time. Thank you.
Thank you, Columbia. So therefore, with that, we'll read it again to include that. So, Secretariat, please.
Thank you. The paragraph would read, the Secretariat of the Convention will work with UNESCO, IUCN, parties, and relevant organizations to record, document, and transmit traditional knowledge of indigenous people and local communities with their free, prior, and informed consent, with a focus on traditional knowledge relevant for the conservation of nature and culture and the sustainable use of natural resources. This information could be public under the decision of indigenous people and local communities. Full stop.
I see Indonesia has asked for the floor, and then Colombia. Indonesia.
Thank you, Chair. Indonesia also would like to add some words after the local communities, taking into account national circumstances. Therefore, the sentence will be, this information could be public under decision of indigenous people and local communities, taking into account national circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll now hear from Colombia, followed by the UK. Colombia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I accept my colleague from Indonesia's inclusion. However, I do see a problem with taking out to facilitate efforts to enable, because we're talking about giving indigenous peoples and local communities the tools and the guidance for themselves to be able to do this on their own based on their knowledge. So I guess to facilitate efforts would be fine to take out, but the enabling part is important because sometimes we don't count with the resources or the tools to be able to actually record, document, and transmit. So the enabling part, I think, should remain and is important. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we hear from the UK, then Mexico? The UK?
Hello, thank you, Chair. We agree with Colombia's intervention. We also think this is not the role of the Secretariat to do this recording, and we would question the capacity to complete this effort, so we prefer the original wording. Thank you.
Thank you. UK, so let's hear from Mexico, followed by the European Union. Mexico?
Thank you, Madam Chair. we could be flexible with the part that's been raised by Colombia to just eliminate, to facilitate, efforts to enable, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's hear from EU. EU.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We support Colombia and UK and would like to stress the importance of indigenous peoples and local communities to have an active role here, which we see as was the original intention with the paragraph. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So let us look at our formulation now, and then we'll present it to you. Just give us a minute to get it. Thank you. So in the spirit of compromise, we're putting forward this new formulated text. I know some parties have asked us to go back to the original. Some parties are saying, well, you know, we can live with bits of it. So let's hear it again, and let's hear it this time with the spirit of compromise, and let's see if we can live with this formulation. Secretariat, could you read this one out, please?
Thank you. The paragraph would read, the Secretariat of the Convention will work with UNESCO, IUCN, parties and relevant organizations to enable indigenous people and local communities to record, document, and transmit traditional knowledge with their free, prior, and informed consent, with focus on traditional knowledge relevant for the conservation of nature and culture and the sustainable use of natural resources. This information could be public under the decision of indigenous people and local communities, taking into account national circumstances. Stop. Thank you.
So hearing this formulation with parties have added bits, I know some people have concerns, but would this formulation be something that we could approve? Could we live with it? It appears so. Thank you so much for your spirit of compromise and willingness to work with us. Thank you. So therefore, task 3C, the new formulated version, is approved with element 3 being approved. Anybody have concerns for element 4? I see no request from the floor for element 4, so therefore element 4 is approved, so therefore the annex is approved. Thank you so much for your spirit of compromise. So therefore, CRP 4 in its entirety is approved. Thank you. An L document will now be prepared to be considered at plenary at COP. Considering it's 11:34 and we were already taken up 30 minutes of the really important time of our CGs and FOC, I would like to adjourn now so that we can go ahead with those sessions. So thank you. To just give you just a few, just a few notices here. Just give me a minute, please. So then we will ask the contact group on item CP7. They'll meet now in room 230A. 230A. In addition, we had previously established a Friends of the Chair for item 21 on invasive alien species will be facilitated by Senka Barananovic of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and the parties invited to join are Brazil, Argentina, France, Canada, Egypt, Switzerland, Finland, Morocco, Colombia, South Africa, UK, Israel. Of course, other parties are welcome to join if they wish, and this group will also meet today, now, in room 516A. So that one, the Friends of the Chair on Invasive Alien Species, they're meeting now in room 516A, and the contact group on item CP7 will meet now in room 230A. And then, as mentioned earlier, the contact group on marine and coastal biodiversity will meet tonight at 7:30 p.m. in room 230B, but you will see that on the screens. And remember the contact group for IPBES 15A. This contact group will meet tonight at 7:30 in room 210A, and that will be co-chaired by Hezekiel Benitez of Mexico and Janina Heim of Germany. This afternoon, we look forward to attending our plenary, which will consider adoption of some L documents under this working group, and therefore this working group will resume on Tuesday morning. Before I close, will the Secretariat have any other announcements? Just give me a minute. Let's see. They are, so give us a minute before we adjourn. Thank you. Yes, so I will give just another announcement on our grouping. Okay, so we had talked about COP agenda item 25 on biodiversity of health. If you recall, I had tasked the Secretary with assisting me in undertaking informal consultations with parties to resolve unresolved issues by working with parties to come up with a conference room paper. Upon consulting with some parties, I realized that significant further discussion is going to be required on this item 25 on biodiversity and health. And in this context, I would like to establish a Friends of the Chair with a mandate to review the document to inform the preparation of the conference of paper. So building on consultations held already, as well as earlier deliberations from SAPSA 24, I would like to invite the following parties to join the Friends of the Chair: Antigua and Barbuda, Argentina, Brazil, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Botswana, China, Japan, the EU, Malawi, Malaysia, Mongolia, Mexico, Namibia, Norway, Serbia, Switzerland, Turkey, UK, and Uganda. Of course, any party who wishes to join are welcome to do so, and I anticipate the Friends of the Chair will be held on Monday, and invite you to consult the schedule for details. So far, we'll have Mr. Andrew Rhodes of Mexico to assist in leading this discussion in my Friends of the Chair. And in addition, I would like to remind you of the earlier discussions held during SAPSA 24 meeting in Geneva on this item, with 3 sessions of contact group and 2 sessions of Friends of the Chair being held, and I urge you to refrain from opening previously agreed language. Thank you very much for waiting and listening to me. So you will see this in the schedule coming up. I apologize for having to have it on Monday, but we are very short on time, and we would really like to resolve as many issues as we can before the end. Thank you. So just 1 minute, please. The Secretariat has a last announcement, and then we'll adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The contact group on Cartagena Protocol item 7A and 7B will resume at 11:45. The Friends of the Chair on Invasive Alien Species will also will convene at 11:45, and at 3 o'clock this afternoon we have plenary. And I ask that you keep an eye on the website, because we also anticipate that the L documents from this morning's contact working group session will be available for the plenary in the afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat. So we adjourn this. I see Norway. Norway, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies. Just a quick clarification on the last Friends of Chair that you mentioned, which will take place on Monday. Which CRP, please? Thank you.
This will be on COP agenda, item 25, on biodiversity and health. So it's that. There's no CRP. As yet, we're not at that stage as yet, because I had said in the plenary that I would have informal consultations and then bring it, but it seems that parties need to have further discussions, and it's best to have that sorted before we get to the CRP stage. So yes, it'll be a COP agenda item 25 on biodiversity and health, and we will have a Friends of the Chair that will meet on Monday. Please keep an eye on the screens for the exact time. Thank you. I hope that clarifies your question. So we will now adjourn this meeting. Thank you very much. Enjoy your day.